Hello and welcome to Beyond the Benefits with Savoy Associates. My name is Chris Vanderwolk, and I'm Chief Compliance Officer here at Savoy. And I'm joined today with our special guest, Michael Castrillon. He is the Director of Specialty Benefit Sales here at Savoy. Michael, how are you this morning?
Excellent. How are you?
Oh, good. So today we're going to talk about some overlooked and underutilized employee benefits. Hard to think that there's anything that's really overlooked or underutilized, but with a list of the things we're going to talk about, there's a lot of things on here that maybe people don't think are either a part of their benefits package or could be a part of their benefits package. So there's more to life beyond medical insurance, isn't there?
There certainly is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a career.
So, Michael, before we dive in, how long have you been with Savoy?
I'm coming up on my 17th anniversary.
Happy anniversary. You want to talk a little bit about your path and how we got here before we jump into our topic for the day?
Certainly. Right, wrong, or indifferent, my path through my career has led me away from medical and entirely into specialty. I started at Paul Revere Insurance, selling individual disability, moved to Cigna Group Insurance, and was introduced to the world of group insurance there for life and disability. And then in 2000, went to Principal Financial Group and helped start their non-medical division at the time. Now it's specialty division. And then in 2007, after working with Savoy for most of the time that I was at Principal, I came over and started the specialty division here at Savoy Associates.
And specialty is a growing part of our business every day. And really helps round out the accounts, help protect the entire employee and their family. Let's start with number one on our list for overlooked and underutilized benefits: disability insurance. You started at Paul Revere with individual, you moved to group. Let's talk a little bit about disability insurance. What's the most important thing to protect for a person?
Well, to call disability one of the most overlooked benefits, it just hurts my heart. It is near and dear to my career, and it's where I've been focused my entire life since college. One of the aspects, the beauty of disability insurance really is its complexity. It really is an art form when you're presenting it to a client, because you can mold it to whatever they need. You can answer financial issues with an owner. You can protect what is very much the most important asset that anyone has, and that's their ability to earn a living. If you don't have the ability to earn a living, you really don't, everything else falls apart. So disability is largely one of the most important protections that you can have as an employee benefit.
Well, but isn't Social Security and state disability enough?
No. Social Security disability is going to protect roughly about a third of your income, and it's only going to protect you if you are expected to pass away in the next 12 months. It is a very strict definition of disability, and it's just not going to be the ability. It's not going to have the ability to replace income. It's going to give you the ability to perhaps get by, barely.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, I saw an article last week that the Social Security Administration was finally updating their jobs in the economy at large. It said you're not qualified for Social Security disability if you can perform any job. And they hadn't updated that in apparently 70 years. And one of the jobs that jumped out was pneumatic tube operators. So think old school mail rooms in buildings. You could be denied Social Security disability in 2024 because you might have been suitable for operating a pneumatic mail tube, even though they don't exist anywhere.
Right.
So hard to pin there. I think you probably have some more solid definitions that we could rely on, some more solid references in the private market. No?
Yes, and the one I always got a kick out of is telephone operator. They actually had a switchboard operator in that book. So If you've ever seen the book, it's pretty fascinating. It's like the old time phone books.
Yeah, and to think that that's what's going to be the difference between you remaining in your house or apartment versus not is sort of terrifying. And if you look at
Correct.
certain industries where maybe your disability and your income don't happen at the same moment, you might have money coming in but can't be able to work, and then on
Yep,
the other end, be back to work but not have money coming in. You're not working on an
exactly.
hourly basis. Those are all really important things.
Yeah,
Um,
I know that we've discussed the disability protection and how important it is in the article that we just recently presented. But the one addition that I wanted to point out was the ability to form the plan to the client's interests. And the one way we do that is the tax strategies. We can make it so everybody gets a tax-free benefit, a taxable benefit. We can carve out the client or the employees, so a portion of the employees get a tax-free benefit. Or what we like to do is we like to offer a tax choice option. What that says is that the employer guarantees that they're going to pay for everybody in the group, but everybody in the group is going to have the ability to choose whether or not they pay the premiums for the benefit. Benefit
mhm.
obviously is if you pay for the benefit, you get the benefit tax free. We've found that about 30% of the employees will elect to buy the benefit. What that means to the client is they save 30% in premium, and
Mhm.
everybody gets a real comprehensive benefit. So there's a lot of ways to mold this product to fit the client's needs, enhance the current benefit, and also offer a real benefit to these employees.
Yeah, that we're talking a few $100s a year in premiums for an employee, and if they do that post tax, they're going to make that up in multiples on their first month's benefit, and
Correct.
that'll the peace of mind that would provide for the duration of the disability when life's already hard. If you're disabled, life is by definition going to be very difficult for a period of time, and to not have that financial stressor is huge.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so let's move along a little bit. We'll jump to the next on our list was business travel accident insurance. When would I ever qualify? When would I use business travel accident insurance?
Anytime that you let go of the doorknob at your house.
Say
The
more.
business travel accident is not just for the old time traveling salesman. Next week, I'm going on a plane to go down to our territory in Florida.
Mhm.
That is un, unreasonably known as business travel. But leaving the office to go to the post office is also business travel. Anytime that
How about
you are
seeing brokers? That's business travel.
business travel, anything.
Enrollment meetings,
What's that?
enrollment meetings, happy hours, all that stuff.
All that stuff. In fact, sitting at your desk in the office can also be protected as business travel. There's three types of business travel accident. And I nickname them just so you understand, so it's easier to
Mhm.
understand. There's travel only. There's salesman protection. That's the coverage that we all know of in business travel accident. Then there's executive level business travel. That's 24-hour coverage. And what that recognizes is the CEO, COO, CFO of a company is going to be representing the company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So wherever they are, they're going to be protected under this policy. The final one is one of the most overlooked ones, and that's office staff. Um, they incur certain risks in coming to the office every day as well. So
Mhm.
there is a protection that covers them from the moment that they leave their house to the moment that they come back at night. And unfortunately, we saw the need for that in on 9/11. These people were in the office, and there was an accident. whatever you want to call it, but there's a protection that's needed there as well. So the three levels of business travel accident can cover just about anything.
And I mean, I don't think I've ever spent, I think it was the most time I've spent talking about business travel accident in my career. I didn't know there were types that covered you really in the office. So I'm learning now too.
Yeah, like anything else, there's just about anything that can be created to blanket a protection. I always
There's a
call
risk.
business travel accident. What's that?
If there's a risk, we can insure it.
Correct. I always call business travel accident as sleep insurance. It allows the owner of a company to sleep better at night, knowing that if anything were to go wrong, they can pick up the phone, call the loved ones of someone that had an accident and said, because they were working for us at the time, here's an extra X dollar amount.
And this really stacks on top of any workers' compensation claims or gets beyond
Anything.
those.
Yep. And
Now,
it's one of the most least expensive coverages in our world. You can protect a group of 20 people for $500,000 for a year for about $1,000.
wow, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket.
Yep.
Continuing on travel, let's say my travel takes me overseas. What about international health insurance?
International travel is oddly part of specialty benefits. I don't understand it. It is medical insurance, but it falls under the umbrella of specialty insurance for some reason. It quite frankly is something that every broker should be peddling. We all have seen these travel sites. I know I'm on several where there's forums, people asking questions about a certain location or a certain country to go to. All you have to do as a broker is put a link to one of the international travel sites and say, hey, if you're looking for medical coverage while you're in Belize or Germany, this is the one for you. Buying international travel is a lot like buying a plane ticket. It's you answer like 3 questions and it gives you a price, and it's usually like $200-300 for a family, and it's again just peace of mind while you're overseas. That's the individual market. There's also a whole group market that is given in several different forms to an employer. Some companies will sell them as weeks, so you'll pre-buy 300 weeks of travel, and as people go overseas, you tag them for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, and then you slowly deplete your bank. The other way to do it is you protect a group of employees for the year or a period of time while they're overseas. It's again a very flexible coverage, but it eliminates any delays when, quite frankly, you're not going to want to see delays because you're in a foreign country and you're in need of medical attention.
I was recently overseas in the spring and got sick towards the end of the trip and didn't need medical attention, but had to wander my way into a pharmacy and do my best speaking Italian, which is not super great. But it really drove home how quickly things can go south, and I'm not invincible anymore like I was maybe 20 years ago or thought I was.
Yep. No, I'm on these travel forums all the time, and the question comes up probably 3-4 times a month. And all I do is throw up the Savoy link for international travel, and we'll pick up 10 to 15 people in every time I throw it up. It's not big money, but it's passive money, and it's easy.
And people are looking for a solution and want that peace of mind when they go somewhere, that if something happens, if they're going down to Costa Rica to go ziplining, if they are going to go run with the bulls in Spain, or just go eat some food that might not settle well with them.
That's right.
There's all sorts of reasons why you might end up needing medical care while you're on vacation. We hope nobody ever does, but it's because there's an outlet for that. What about coming back home? Hopefully there's no legal issues overseas, but what happens back home? You need a will. You've got a neighbor you're having a challenge with, or you're going through a collections issue. You've got a family issue. How about some group legal services? How's that work?
Yeah, this is a line of coverage that I really needed to be convinced was worthwhile. I every time that I sat in front of someone selling legal services, I was shown that, oh, there's so many things that you do on a daily basis that you could sue someone for, or that you need an attorney to look over the contract. And they always point to leasing a car or renting a house, and I always thought to myself, well, that's stuff that I can do. I don't necessarily need to call my attorney to have that done. But now that I've seen some actual execution of this product, my wife, very simple. My wife needed a name change. Her first name was shortened when she was born in Italy. We have the coverage. I contacted an attorney. He did all the paperwork, and her new passport, her new driver's license, everything came in the mail like 3 weeks later. It's real simple. It's real efficient. All you do is give your ID number to the attorney, and they go to work for you. If you do have issues with your landlord, or if you do have will prep services, all of it is free. Now, there are a couple of things that you can't do with it. You can't sue your employer, which is something that an employer is concerned about in putting these pieces in place. They can't sue the employer. You can't have legal defense in a criminal trial. The more severe these things get, or the legal issues get, then this starts to fall off. And quite frankly, you wouldn't want something that's intended to protect you for minor issues to have to protect you in a major criminal case.
Yeah, this is good for things like if your spouse is getting a new job, you can send over the employment agreement, have them look through, make sure it's not too onerous, make sure that if there's a non-compete, that it's not going to preclude them from working afterwards, things like that. It's there's
Correct.
a lot of things that we do cross that would be useful to have an attorney. And then there's a bunch of things where having an attorney is sort of like a cheat code, because a bar ID is taken very seriously. So you could write the same letter that I write, but because I've got an attorney ID, it's going to be treated differently. And so there's times where having an attorney send a letter is like a cheat code to getting through the system. And that's where and I think part of it too is I've got this philosophy that a large part of what we do in our world is under-lawyered, because we're so afraid to call lawyers, because we know it's going to cost $5,000 to $8,000 no matter what we call them for. Being able to call and talk to a lawyer and get some good advice without being afraid that every 6 minutes you talk to them costs you $50 or $60 or $70 is a big difference.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So there are, I don't know the exact count now, but probably somewhere between 150 and 200 different leave ordinances around the country. There are state, municipal, federal ordinances, laws, statutes, all different bodies of law. How are employees managing? How do employees keep track of all this? How do they administer when an employee goes out and can't come into work for whatever the reason might be?
Well, today they really have two options. They either call their broker and ask them for their legal advice on how to manage absences, or they get an absence management program.
And should they call their broker for legal advice? Is that a good plan?
Not always.
I would say that your brother.
Yeah, absence management is becoming much more important today than it ever has. Next year, there's 18 states that add family medical leave onto their mandated benefit list. There's always the 5 state disabilities. There's always the federal leave management that's unpaid. Like you said,
all these are exactly the same and super easy to administer, right?
They're counted exactly the same, Chris.
It-
Um, some of them require counting down to the actual minute, so it gets really complicated really fast. And if you're a 5 life group, you might be able to handle it. But if you're a 500 life group, absence management really is the only way to do this.
Yeah, I said you cross into if you got employees across state lines or even in some places across city lines, it gets to be really hard to do. And it's almost unreasonable to think that any person could do these jobs. This has to be programmed in somewhere because how else are you going to know what zip code has which laws and where it applies? It's impossible for a human to keep up with.
Yep. And ever since COVID, now you have the added complexity of working remotely and what laws apply to an employee that works remotely.
Yeah, it's hard. And then even in some cases, we had a leave example where the employee lived out in Washington State, never worked a minute in Washington State. They went out on they were merchant marine, so they went out on big ships for a long period of time. The ships left from the East Coast, so the employee lived on the West Coast, never worked on the West Coast, would fly out because they were leaving for a long time, get on the ship in the East Coast and fly out. And Washington's leave ordinance still applied because there was a catch-all for just anybody who lived in Washington was subject to it. So this employer ran an operation out of Baltimore, had an employee who it didn't matter where they lived because they always worked in Baltimore and left from Baltimore, came back, and was still subject to Washington's paid leave law. And that if that doesn't make life hard, I don't know what does.
Well, we had a client here in New Jersey that had been a client for us for 16 years. And when the discussion of disability came up, the employer said to me, "Oh, we have a real trend issue here." And I said, "What's the trend issue?" She said, "Well, we have about a dozen to a dozen and a half employees that go on disability at the same time." I'm like, "Really? Tell me more about this." She said, "Yeah, and right about the middle of September." And the one guy that was in the meeting with us turned to her and said, "When's hunting season?" And turns out there was 15 gentlemen that worked for this company that liked to hunt together. So they would call out sick and it would count as a disability. They'd be out for a week. And it's simple as that.
Wow. Yeah. It's the more time you spend in this industry, the more things you see where employees all get together and figure stuff out. In a prior life, we had an employer where everybody realized they could run out and get designer sunglasses at this one optometrist. We flagged that really quick, but word passes quickly in employee circles. So let's pivot now to word passing about things where it shouldn't, and we'll talk about identity theft and identity theft protection. Our information's out there. I kind of assume at this point that everybody has my social security number. I'm not going to say it here on the podcast, but I assume that it's out there and everybody knows my mother's maiden name and all those things. And so everything's compromised. What do I do if I have identity theft protection? How does that help me? I guess sleep insurance. What is that? How's that my sleep insurance?
Well, again, this is one of those lines of coverage that I had to be convinced was a valuable asset. And any time that I go to make a big purchase, whether it's a couch or this weekend I bought a car for my wife. So these purchases happen as I'm sitting there with the salesperson. I will get an alert on my phone that says, "Hey, a credit inquiry has been made," or "Are you making this purchase?" And all you got to do is click yes, and you're fine. But if you're not sitting in front of a salesman and those alerts come up, now you've got an issue. And before it becomes a real big problem for you, you can squash it by just saying, "No, that's not me," and it just goes away. because the person who is trying to steal your identity has just been blocked.
And then if they do succeed, I imagine there's also processes and tools to help people fight the bad debts that were not really theirs and reclaim their rightful credit standing and things like that, right?
Correct. There is an insurance policy that's embedded in the program that pays out to your creditors or whatever is needed to restore your ID identification properly. But like I said, most of the time, because this is so quick and because it is so comprehensive, more often than not, it doesn't even get to that point. I've had this coverage now for, I think, 8 or 9 years, and I might get a dozen to a dozen and a half inquiries throughout the year. Most of them are, hey, did you apply for this credit card? Yes. Hey, are you buying a super yacht in Morocco? No.
I wish.
But I mean, it's really just a yes or no. If you don't respond to the email, they'll actually call you. It's pretty comprehensive, and it doesn't invade your day in any way. It's just yes or no, and it's done. But if things do go awry, and we all see data breaches all the time, if that does happen and you're impacted, instead of spending hours of your work day fixing it, you just initiate a claim with the carrier, and they take care of it for you.
Yeah, this is that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you say no on that alert, it's hundreds of hours to restore your identity, if not into the thousands. It's a massive time sink for people, and why it makes a good employee benefit is, as you mentioned, people are going to do this at work because that's when people are able to answer their phone calls and they can call the bank. The hours are the same, so they're going to be somewhere else not working because there's something far more important to them. And
exactly,
if you can keep them from ever having that problem, it's one of those things where insurance is best when it's never used, but get rid of that problem, and all of a sudden you don't have to worry about absenteeism or presenteeism, where they're at work, they're not really at work. They're in a conference room on the phone for 8 hours trying to sort this thing out.
If they're not spending work hours dealing with the issue, they're thinking about the issue, and they're not thinking about their job.
Absolutely. So our final benefit is one that I don't need to be convinced on the value of, because I have dogs. So I know dogs get expensive when you go to the vet. Let's talk about pet insurance and maybe some of the bigger trends. I know that pets are ever more important now for younger people. And I also know that I've got dogs. One had a heart surgery. Another one had a broken leg at one point. Constant vet bills. So let's talk pet insurance as an employee benefit.
Yeah, it's a lot like medical insurance. To be honest with you, there's coverage for. I break it down into 3 different levels. You have the preventative only. This is the one that pays for your regular checkups for the pet. These do not depend, or the preventative coverage does not depend on the age of the dog or the breed or or cat or snake or whatever you have. It's a flat monthly rate that everybody pays the same. Then you have protection for some most common medical needs. Again, flat rate, no matter what you have, no matter how old the dog or cat or whatever is, it's all going to be the same. But it's only going to cover a select few procedures, or think in terms of dental insurance, you have preventative and basic. It's going to be some most commonly used procedures. Then you have the fully insured option. We all know what that looks like on the medical side. It's going to take into account how old the dog or cat is. It's going to take into account what breed or what type of cat it is. And again, I use dog and cats. Obviously, there's iguanas, parrots, cockatiels, whatever you got. There is a coverage for it, but it's going to take into account the actual insured pet. But in return, it's going to be a fully insured medical plan for that pet.
Yeah, it exists like old school health insurance is. So we have a 4-year-old dog. We got her the first night we got her when she was a little puppy. She jumped off the bed and she hurt her shoulder a little bit. So I took her to the animal hospital, and there they discovered that she had a heart murmur. And it was the first day we hadn't put her on insurance yet. So her heart murmur was basically lasered off. Nothing they could do about that. But we still had pet insurance, which is good because she was a puppy and ate all sorts of stuff she wasn't supposed to. And so we had a few trips to the vet with her, and they covered all of those things for her. They wouldn't cover the heart issue, but they covered everything that she ate that she shouldn't have that we were afraid was going to make her really sick.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
She's good. She's very healthy now. She's a happy girl. She had the heart surgery. She's happy.
Yeah, I mean, again, pet insurance, it's one of those things that prevents a very bad decision having to be made because of finances. And we all have been there where, you know, the expense outweighs the value, but, you know, how do you put a value on a pet? And that's what I always say to people. It really is the coverage that is going to save that thought of, is this pet worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And we all know the answer to that.
Yes, for me anyway. So,
Yep.
Well, so this is just Devin. There's so many other things too. How can our audience, primarily benefits brokers, how can they find out more about these and other programs for their clients?
Well, we're always available to talk specialty. I've said it before and I'll say it again. No one knows more or cares more about specialty insurance than our team. We're here to help. The division was created on the grounds of helping brokers avoid landmines in the specialty market. We all know that there are some. We are on the cutting edge of what's going on in the market. We know what carrier's hot. We know what products are hot. We've done these deep dives into these tertiary benefits that no one thinks of on a regular basis. Give us the story that your client is facing, and we'll help you protect them.
All right. Yeah. Recruit, retain, protect. It's all the important stuff. So, Michael, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today at Beyond the Benefits with Savoy Associates. Have a great day.